Okay, so I wanted to do the follow-up on the video where I talked about what's causing the violence in Jamaican schools. Today I want to look at the solutions. Number one, let's get right into it. It's important that if we're gonna really get at the root of the problem of violence in Jamaican schools, we have to now have psychologists in schools. So there are many different types of psychologists, okay, dealing with different areas of life. But the type of psychologist that is required to address this issue that we're having in our schools would be like the clinical psychologist, right? Now, here's the thing. You can have educational psychologists. I think many schools in Jamaica have access to and utilize the services of educational psychologists, but you need to have a clinical psychologist or a counseling psychologist to help with the behavioral problems. So what we're dealing with here, we're dealing with we mentioned in the first video, if you saw it, we mentioned issues of trauma that was fueling the violence. We mentioned issues of substance use that was fueling the violence. And if that's happening, then you need intervention that will address just that. So it's important, even though it may be expensive, it's important that stakeholders look at introducing psychologists into the school system. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a psychologist and I'm a part of that professional group. I'm saying this because this is really going to be a very important part of useful intervention. The problem has gone to a place where having referrals for the psychological services that are needed is not going to really help. I think we have to get to a point, at least for an extended period of time, where the psychologist is in the school. That's gonna be needed, because we're not at a place where we have probably like less than 10% of the students needing the intervention. We're at a place where probably about 60 to 70% of the students need this kind of intervention. So it's a measure that is needed. As I said, maybe expensive, but it's necessary, and it's gonna have the benefits. So over the years, I've seen where we've introduced many different other professional groups to help with managing behavior. Deans of discipline, guidance counselors, school support personnel. There's many others. I think there is school safety. The title escapes me right now, but many new professional groups have been introduced to address the problem, and I think it's good. But here's the thing: if you don't have enough, so if the ratios are off, then it's just going to actually make the problem worse. It's not going to be a case where, okay, so at least we have one. No, it makes the problem worse, because think about it. If you're trying to access a service and the service is only available to one person of the 20 people who will be trying to access the service, then it's possible that the other 19 will become disgruntled. In addition to why they need the help, they're upset because it's so difficult to get it when it's available. So we have to look at that factor, which I'm sure is easy to miss. So it's not helpful to have the people in place, but you don't have enough to serve the needs. So that's why I'm saying it's important for us to increase the ratios of the support personnel, not just the teachers, not just increasing the number of teachers. We need the support personnel to also be, a huge part of managing the whole school system, and we need those numbers to be greater if you're gonna have real change, if you're gonna have it really make a difference in the violence that we're seeing in schools. All right, so next solution of course would be to address the substance use problem. We have a substance use problem in our Jamaican young people and children and young people. Let's not even get into the adults, we know that. But we do have a serious problem with youngsters. So school age children, they're exposed, they're utilizing the available means to access substances that alter their moods, alter their behavior, and lead to violence. And so we have to address that. Addressing that is something that we have to be really honest about the problem. And the problem is large. And it's important, if the problem is large, that addressing it, we go big. All right? So we do need to take that on as a major program. It can't be just, having the service available, doing referrals. You have to have something that addresses right now that huge need for helping students manage and, prevent them from using substances in the first place. All right, so I think it's important that in order to manage the behavior and really prevent school violence and really to cauterize the incidents of school violence in Jamaica, we have to get to a point where we remove the violent students. And I know that that's another thing where everybody says it, but everybody also says that is just impossible because it's costly. It's not as costly as what will happen when you have a classroom of 42 students. 2 are violent or consistently exhibit violent behavior, and those 2 disrupt the class, number 1. Number 2, the other students start to behave similarly. So the problem is growing. So it's important to remove those students from that setting. Once they get to a certain level where they are causing significant problems, then you need to remove them, get them the help they need in a setting that is similar to school. It's a school setting, but that setting is more targeted to address the behavioral problems, right? It's important that we actually separate students like that. There is nothing morally wrong with that. I mean, I'm sure there are people who feel differently. I want you to think about it some more. It's important. You can't have this sort of behavioral contamination where kids come into the school system and they actually learn to be violent because their peers are violent. That doesn't help. All right. The final one I want to talk about, which is very important, is of course behavior management structure. We have to create behavior management structure in school. We cannot be talking about what we're going to do to reduce a behavior when the behavior has taken place. The time to meet and talk about the behavior is not after the behavior has taken place. You're trying to figure out, okay, so what do we do? You should already have that in place. You should already have a structure really dealing with, okay, so if the child does this, this is what happens. This is the office, or this is the individual who will be responsible for administering the intervention. All that should be laid out, because sometimes what happens is, and this makes the behavior worse, when you're spending time trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? And concerns and complaints come in about how it was handled and whether it was handled properly, that just makes everything worse. So it's important that we start off with a behavioral structure. We have to put a structure in place. We're not going to wait for the behavior to happen to decide what's going to be appropriate, what's going to be the appropriate intervention. We have to start doing that from the beginning. So structure in place, and whatever behaviors come about, we can handle them. not that we wait until the behavior takes place and then we go ahead and put a structure in. So pretty much that's what I wanted to look at in terms of just proposing some remedies for managing and for really getting rid of violence in schools, because behavior problems, inevitable, it's going to happen. You're going to have behavioral challenges among students, but violence does not have to take place. So I'm hoping that we can address it. All right, so remember, don't be nice, be good.